All right, Javier, thanks so much for sending in your swing. Let's see it. Show us your swing. Lots of good stuff. Look at that divot. Pinched it nicely. Good bounce. Finished position. Got some things that I think will help here. Address. Make sure you're not out over your toes. You look a little bit on your toes at address. I would make sure your weight more in the center of your feet, maybe even slightly towards your heels. Kind of hard to see from this camera angle, but I'm going to do the best I can. Your first move, I think the club head's getting kind of in behind the hands. When that club shaft gets parallel to the ground, I would bet that club head's behind your hands. So one of the things that I'm going to suggest and show you how to do is to get the club head to be a little bit more out in front of your hands. I think a good thought for you is going to be your hands are going to be closer to you and the club head's going to be a little more outside of the hands. When the club head gets in behind you quick, then the shaft can get laid off. That shaft's a bit horizontal right there. The club's pointing a bit out towards in front of the target line. I'd like to see that shaft a bit more vertical there. And the reason I say that is when you get the club head inside and you get the club shaft laid off, then the tendency is it wants to steepen right here. And I think that club shaft, again, from this camera angle, a little hard to see, but I think that shaft wants to steepen a bit in transition. And then you have to work pretty hard here at impact to probably square the club face up. You do a good job, though, of really rotating and getting out of the way to a nice, balanced, finished position. All right? One of the things that when I look at this golf swing, and there's a lot of good stuff going on here, and you look like you have a good set of hands and you can square the club face up and you can probably hit a nice draw. One of the things I always tell players who take it inside and they get the shaft a bit laid off and then they have to steepen it coming down is we want to change the probability of that impact. We can make a more conducive impact position by changing the probability of that. And how do we do that? Well, the first move, as I mentioned, we want to get the club head a little more out in front of you. That's going to get the shaft to be a little bit more vertical here. All right? And when the shaft gets a little more vertical here, now we can shallow it out. Okay? We can get the club shaft to shallow out, and your wrist angles at this point will change. That lead wrist, as you can see it right there, is pretty cupped. We can get that lead wrist to be a bit flatter in transition, but I think we need to change this backswing first. We need to get this backswing cleaned up, and then we can flatten out that lead wrist a bit coming down, and that's going to allow that left leg to not straighten up so soon. We can put a little flexion in the knee. We can get the left foot to roll a little bit more through the instep, and those things will be more conducive from an accuracy standpoint. It'll change the probability, allow you to repeat shots a little bit easier. So these swings can be difficult because you're probably doing a good job at the bottom, but if we want to change the probability, we got to change the shape going back a little bit so we can change that shape coming down, layer in a little support with the left foot, and I think you'll find yourself hitting more consistent shots through the back. All right, here it comes.
Javier, thanks so much for sending in your swing. A lot of good stuff there, and as I mentioned in the analysis, we're just going to kind of change a few things going back, which I think will allow you to get that lead wrist in a little better position coming down. So at address, once you're here, what I want you to do is as you take it back is let the hands ride a little bit more inside of the club head. You might feel like your hands kind of stay a little closer to your lead arm, of course, which is your right arm. Just feel like it's really snug up against the chest, and let the hands come inside, and then the club head will stay a little bit more to the outside like that. Don't get going this way, okay, where your hands kind of run away and then the club head wants to dip behind. And as I mentioned, that'll get the shaft a little bit too horizontal here. And then as you come down, you're going to pull on the shaft a little bit where that lead wrist gets a little bit cupped. So by getting this to start more like this, now I think the shaft will kind of be a little more vertical, right? I don't think it'll be exactly vertical. I think it'll be slightly at an angle, which is good, just not too much this way, right? You get too much this way, then it wants to go there. And if we can get you a little more here, feel a little more this, then we can get it to go here, and that's where that lead wrist starts to flatten out. So I would do a lot of kind of halfway back here, one, hands inside the club head, feel a little more vertical, okay? And then from there, as you come down, I really want you to feel like this lead wrist kind of rolls out this way. I'm gonna take the back of my glove towards you like this. I'm trying to roll that glove towards the camera rather than pull down where it's cupped and looking at me, right? And when you kind of cup it, then the shaft wants to steepen. And again, I think that's a little bit because of what you were doing right here. All right, so again, here's one, here's two, and then from there, feel that lead wrist flatten. You'll feel the elbows pinch more as you do that, and then you can see how the shaft wants to shallow out, and then from there, you can let that good rotation just take over all the way to the finished position. So change the swing shape just a little bit. I think it'll change the probability a little more in your favor. Lots of good stuff, good speed. Congratulations on winning the Voice, and thank you for showing us your swing.